Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 953, and today's date is April 24th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I begin, I just want to make an announcement. The interview with Bill Holter has now been uploaded to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, so you can go right over to that channel. You can view the video, or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there, or you can go to newssentinel.com. Same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side, you can play the video there. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, back on April 11th, we understand at this point that the Fed called emergency meetings. Now, everyone is trying to figure out why did they call emergency meetings. Now, if the economy is doing well and everything is fine, there's no reason for an emergency meeting. Now, the only reason you call an emergency meeting, and if anyone's worked in a company before or you had some type of family emergency, you call a meeting to figure out what you're going to do in an emergency if there's a problem. And we see right now that there was a meeting between Yellen, the president, the vice president, finance ministers, bankers, and as we can see, the Obama administration is continually telling us that, his administration is very transparent, the Fed is very transparent, it's working for the people, everything is for the people, and there was one person that asked the Federal Reserve by writing in for some information about what happened in the meeting. And under the Freedom of Information Act, 5 U.S.C. 552, they were asking for the minutes of what happened in the meeting. Now, of course, as we know, they're never going to give up the minutes of what happened in this meeting because the Fed, the president, the administration, they're not working for the people. But very interestingly, a letter came back, and the letter stated that the staff searched the board records and made suitable inquiries, but did not find any documents responsive to the request, and cannot provide any information on what happened in the meeting. So when you hear this and you look at this and you realize what's going on, you realize that the Fed, the Obama administration, they are not accountable to the public whatsoever. And you can see where their loyalties lie. It is not for the people, but for themselves, corporations, foreign entities, etc., etc. Now, out in Germany, Obama is out there trying to push the TTIP, trying to convince the people out there how great it's going to be for them. And thousands upon thousands of protesters have come out onto the streets of Hanover to say, absolutely not, we do not want this TTIP, US-EU trade deal. And many Germans feel it will reduce consumer protection and undermine workers' protection. People say that the deal is going to compromise the European Union's sovereignty and will create much more secrecy, with one of the biggest concerns being that the agreement is wrapped up in a big veil of secrecy that people are not happy with. And that's exactly right. This whole thing's been a secret because it's not for the people. It is for corporations, the central bank, and it is definitely not for the people. Actually, the German economy minister is saying if the U.S. continues to insist on the transatlantic trade and investment partnership in its current form, it may ruin the entire free trade deal. And he went on to say that the Americans want to hold fast to their Buy American idea. We can't accept that. They don't want to open their public tenders to European companies. He said, for me, that goes against free trade. If the Americans hold fast to this position, we don't need the free trade treaty, and TTIP will fail. Now, I'm just going to substitute the word Buy American because that's not what it's really about. It's about corporations taking control. It's about central banks taking control and taking the sovereignty away from each and every one of the countries, and even the sovereignty of the United States. And actually, this entire deal, the TPP, doesn't work for the United States either. It doesn't help the people. It's not going to bring in more jobs. Actually, it's going to take a lot of jobs away from Americans, just like NAFTA and all the other trade agreements, which we reported on previously. Now, out in Kiev, we hear some information that the Kiev government, they are testing a tactical ballistic missile. Now, the tactical ballistic missile can be used in battlefield with a range of about 300 kilometers. And the missiles that they're testing can carry nuclear, biological, and chemical payloads. And this is something that we're going to have to watch very, very carefully, because as we realize, as tensions heat up in this area, they might resort to using this type of weapon. Now, on the other hand, there are others saying that this is fake, phony, and false, and what they're really testing doesn't work whatsoever. But I think what they're doing is they're putting this out there to let everyone know that something might occur, and they might have snuck something into the country in the with the CIA, with the U.S. government, other agencies helping to get this in there to make it seem like that they created it on their own, because when the offensive starts, they'll be able to use this type of weapon. Now, things are really heating up with NATO and Russia. NATO now wants to have a naval presence in the Black Sea. But it's not going to be very simple, because we have to remember the Montreux Convention of 1936 strictly regulates the entry of warships into the Black Sea. Also, it restricts the size. It also restricts what ships can enter the sea. And each ship only has about 21 days in the Black Sea, then they have to leave. Unless you are one of those countries that have a presence on the Black Sea, then you can have your ships there. And that means that Turkey is going to have to do the heavy lifting in this area, along with Ukraine, along with Bulgaria, along with Romania. And we're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully, because we see that what they're trying to do is surround Russia completely. And we see they're placing all military assets all around to make sure that they encircled Russia, just like they're doing to China in the Pacific. Now, we see that North Korea allegedly launched a ballistic missile from a submarine. And of course, the U.S. is out there saying, okay, this is it. They've just done this, and now they're hit the red line. And North Korea, they have approached the United States many, many times saying, listen, we will stop these missile tests. And most of them don't even work. And others, we don't even have proof that they actually did it. Like the earthquake that happened in North Korea, there's no radiation. Japan even reported they're seeing absolutely no evidence that it was any type of nuclear weapon. And I think there was just an earthquake, and they used that propaganda with no proof behind it just to push the war agenda. And what I mean by that is it allowed them, because as soon as it happened, they increased the military budget. South Korea increased their military budget. They start making deals, bringing in the THAAD missile system. They made deals of bringing in more military assets. They started to have drills in the South because of all this. The speakers went up in the zone between the two countries. And we see that the U.S. is using this to continually provoke North Korea. Now, North Korea has come out and said, listen, if you stop the drills and you calm everything down, we will stop using our nuclear weapons, and we would like to have peace negotiations with the U.S. But the U.S. has not responded whatsoever to that, and you can see they're ramping up the provocations towards North Korea. Now, the United States is taking it a step further. The United States now is restricting the travel of the North Korean foreign minister to the UN. The foreign minister will only be allowed to work within the UN and do the functions within this small little area because of their latest missile testing. And all of this is showing us that the United States is continually provoking each one of these countries, China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, Syria, because they're really trying very, very hard at this point to try to get this war started. Now, we realize that China is saying, hey, listen, we don't want to have anything to do with North Korea. We're placing, and we agree with the United States in placing sanctions on North Korea, so you can see we're on your side. But the United States doesn't want this, because they know that if they can get into North Korea and they can start the war, they want it to lead to China. So China right now, they're bringing some troops up to the border of North Korea because they realize that eventually what's going to happen is if they can't get the war started with China, they can't get it with Russia, they're going to go with North Korea because they know North Korea, they have the ability to provoke, and they are pretty sure they can get him to do something. And if they don't do something, they can show the world that, yeah, with a false flag, they did something and we need to go in there. And China realizes this. And there are reports that China is bringing in soldiers up to the border of North Korea because they realize what the United States is doing at this point, just like Russia realizes it. And this is why they continually try to tamp everything down, because they know right now that the U.S. is continually pushing the idea of war in all these areas. Now, Obama is out there, and he can assure us that there's going to be no ground troops in Syria to remove Assad. He said it would be a mistake for the United States or Great Britain to send ground troops and other military assets into Syria to remove Assad. He's saying that the international community needs to come together to talk about how we're going to have this transitional government and how Assad is going to step down. Well, Russia, Syria, they've already discussed this. It's going to be left up to the people. And if you really listen to what he's saying, he's threatening the entire process by saying that Assad must step down. Now, he said this in Geneva 1. They said it in Geneva 2. Here we are in Geneva 3. Nothing has changed. So if you really listen to Obama, he says he can assure the American people and the world that the United States, Great Britain, and the coalition forces, they're not bringing in troops. But as we reported, the United States, Great Britain, the coalition forces, they've been bringing in troops and positioning them right outside of Syria. A lot of the troops are in Iraq. There are some troops in Syria. Remember when he assured us that the troops will be coming home from Afghanistan? Well, it looks like the opposite is happening. Remember when he assured us that there'll be no ground troops in Iraq? Well, now we have 3,800 plus permanent soldiers, and we also have those temporary soldiers, which is about 4,000 or so. And of course, there's no expiration date on how long they're going to be in there. So they're really permanent soldiers. So if you add up the numbers, we're almost up to 8,000 soldiers or so, where he said there's going to be no ground troops in Iraq. And we also have ground troops in Syria. Remember those special op teams? Well, guess what? They're in Syria. So we do have troops in all of these areas. So far, all I see is lies coming from him. And this tells us that he's going to do the actual opposite, because we know that Ashton Carter has been visiting all the coalition forces, telling them they need more soldiers, more military assets into this area. And this is what they've been doing. And we can see right now that the U.S. is also building bases in Syria, which are complete now, where they can bring in C-130 transport planes and other military assets into the area. And Obama right now is really threatening, saying, listen, if we don't come up with this type of plan by having Assad step down, all we have left is force. And we see already the talks are collapsing. Now, Turkey is out there saying that, and this is coming from the Turkish Prime Minister, they're going to take all necessary measures to stop the missiles coming in from Syria into Turkey. Of course, they're saying the Islamic State is firing the missiles, but what we can see right now is they are building up and preparing to go into Syria along with the U.S., along with Great Britain, along with the coalition forces. And we see at this point that Denmark and many other countries have already brought in military assets, more soldiers, and are contributing to the next great offensive. And if plans and the talks all start breaking down, they're going in. This is why they're prepared for all of this. And every time the U.S. government comes out and tells you they're not doing it, they're not doing it, they're not doing it, well, guess what? They're about to do it. Now, we're getting reports that the Obama administration will likely soon release the 28-page secret chapter about the Saudis being involved in 9/11. Now, we know Obama went to Saudi Arabia to have talks. We know that Saudi Arabia is moving away from the petrodollar, and it seems that maybe those talks didn't go that well. And it looks like Saudi Arabia is saying, you know something, we're going to continually move away. We're going to sell a lot of the assets. And it looks like the U.S. government right now is continually threatening Saudi Arabia. And we know in these 28 pages, no matter what they are, we know this is not going to be the truth. We know it's not going to directly point to Saudi Arabia. They're going to make it seem like it really is. Actually, probably the 28 pages is not going to say that much. But when we really look at this, we can see why they had this and why they kept it, because they knew eventually what was going to happen, because they knew the system was breaking down, is they were going to have to threaten countries. I mean, if you look at what Obama's doing out in England, trying to convince them to stay in the EU, he's out there threatening all of these countries. He's out there in Germany. He's out there in England. He's in Saudi Arabia saying, no, you need to stay with us, with the central banking system. You cannot veer off and make it better for your people. You can't do any of this. You need to stay with this failing economic system. And if you really think about it, if we believe the official story that Saudi Arabia really did 9/11, which we know Saudi Arabia was not the country that pulled off the entire operation of 9/11. We know it had to be an inside job. We know Israel was involved with it. There could have been other countries, yes. We know there were a lot of U.S. agencies involved in this. And if we believe the official story of the U.S., and they held the 28 pages in the deep basements of the administration, and they kept it locked under tight guard, but they leaked out that it was Saudi Arabia. Basically, what our government is telling us is that the towers came down, Americans were killed, and the U.S. government decided to protect another country and could care less about the people of the U.S. So it chose another country over its own citizens. They decided to protect their financial system over its own citizens. This is if we believe their story that it was Saudi Arabia. Think about what their message is to the people of the United States. Oh, we're sorry that all these people died, but we're going to protect the country that did it. And it's amazing to me that everyone should be screaming on the top of their lungs throughout this country saying, wait a minute, you knew about this, and we should be pointing our finger at the government, and you're telling us, if we believe their officials, if we believe their story, you're telling us that you decided to protect another country, you decided to protect your financial system, you decided to look the other way and not care about the people of the United States. So going forward, if something else happened, we can expect the same thing. People should be really angry about what the government is telling us right now. The entire country should say, wait a minute, you could care less about us, and you care more about protecting another country. But no one's looking at it in this way, which is amazing to me. And we can see right now that the government employees, they really don't care about the people of the United States. They care about the central bank. They care about foreign governments. They care about corporations. The last on the list, it is the people of the United States. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.